Britnie Turner, I'm unbelievably grateful and excited to talk to you today for She Can. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for having me. I'm so excited about what this is doing. And my goodness, I wish I had this growing up and just having the exposure to these incredible women across the world. I started really young, and so I want to encourage my young listeners on here. And at 12 years old, I had this vision of doing work specifically in Africa. I didn't know where, but I wanted to serve in villages that were looking for elevating themselves. So people wanting to get educations and start new lives and build new communities. And I knew that that would be my destiny. And so I actually felt the presence of God, and I knew that it was like what I was called to do. And whether you believe in that or not, I don't care. This is my story. This is all I have. This is all I know. And so that became what I would call my identity from 12 on, is like, okay, I'm going to go live in Africa and I'm going to serve, and this is going to be my life. And the reason I wanted to take a second to explain that is, especially when you're young and you're trying to figure out like who you are. Everybody's like, well, who are you? I'm like, I don't freaking know. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. Is that sometimes God will put these seeds in your heart, or these pictures and these visions, to get you to start going down a path. Because we've all heard the phrase, God won't give you something you can't handle. But that's also when it comes to visions. Had I seen that I would have become one of the probably wealthiest women in the world in my 30s, one of the only island owners in the world, and have 7 businesses and be, rescuing people full time almost with my life, I would have never believed that. And so when you're young, or no matter how old you are, when you're just getting started, you see in part, you hear in part, you get these desires in part. And women, we have this intuition. We know we're supposed to, but even in that knowing, you don't have the full picture. But that's what makes the journey fun. That's what makes it exciting and an adventure, versus like having to have it all figured out. And if I could point at one thing I've seen that holds women back from everything they're called to be, is we feel like, because we are stabilizers and nesters and like all this stuff, we delay in taking action because we feel like we have to have it all figured out first, which is bullcrap. Your whole life can change in a day. You can meet somebody, you'll meet your husband one day, you'll meet your best friend one day, you'll be introduced to an idea that gives you something you want to start a business around. Like your home can be hit by a hurricane. Like things happen that change everything. To ever think that you have a chance at having it all figured out before you take a next step is madness. So just give yourself a little grace and say, what is the desire in my heart? What do I really want to go after? Because that desire is there for a reason. I'm going to take the best next steps towards accomplishing this vision. And as I'm taking those next steps, I know that the next step will unfold in front of me. And so at 12 years old, I wanted to do this work in Africa. I ended up going into a survival school that taught you how to, no matter what the mission was, you can stay on track regardless of how hard the environment is, how much food you do or do not have, or how many obstacles are thrown at you. And because I wanted to work in like tough environments, doing tough projects, like this is who I am. And I had no idea that that was really training for business, because business can be just as difficult, but in a totally different way. And so at 17, I was on a mission trip to Costa Rica, and I met a little girl that had been abused. Now, when I looked in her eyes and I saw that brokenness, because in the community that I was in, women had no value. Children had no value. They were property, and they were property you could do whatever you want with. And when I found out that 1 out of every 4 babies in that environment die from abuse from their father before they turn 1, let alone how many die after that, and that it was socially acceptable. It's just how it is. This is just how it is for women here. I was like, no, know. And I looked at my life because I grew up with what would be considered very poor. I looked at my life and I had no money, I had no resources, I had no influence, but I couldn't live on this earth being okay with the fact that these little girls are suffering, and it was just understood. Now, I didn't go on a rampage of hate towards men in my actions, because that's not the solution. Hate will never make people be more loved. I decided to go gain the influence, to gain the resources, and to gain the network and the mindset that would allow me to have the tools to be able to share why this child is not your property to abuse. They have value, and women have value. They're not just your toys. Like, I decided to dedicate my life to shifting what's possible for women by first starting with living as an example of what's possible. And that is really important, because one of my favorite quotes in the world is from Buckminster Fuller. He says, you never change anything by fighting the existing system. You change things by creating a better system that makes the other one obsolete. And I love that, and I live by that, because you really have three options in life for those who are listening. If you see something you really don't like and you're passionate about wanting to fix it, you can hide your head in a hole like an ostrich and say, oh, I just can't hear about that. It just upsets me. Ugh, you can do that. Or you can become a hater activist and just try to fight it and say it's wrong, give us more rights, blah, blah. Or you can, again, create a better system that says, no, I happen to be the most successful real estate developer in the Southeast. Oh yeah, I magically happen to be a woman. I didn't even notice that. I guess it is a thing. And it happens to be a male-dominated industry. Oh, cool. Doesn't matter to me, because I happen to be hella good at design, managing multiple things at one time, creating a vision that allows the community to elevate versus just be taken out. So we're naturally better at pretty much everything except for focus. Guys can be in one box at a time better than us, and they have better emotional control, and they don't beat themselves up the way that we do. So if you can manage your energy and your emotions, there's nothing you can't accomplish. So that is a quick background on how I got started, and some things that I wish I had known starting out.
Britnie, I absolutely love listening to you. We could go on for an hour or five. You have an incredibly big vision, and we get back to that. But tell me exactly, how did you get there? As in, what were the steps? So did you go to university? What were your steps? How did you start? I know you started in real estate. Tell us a little bit about this journey, and maybe then we also understand how your vision became bigger and bigger, because I think that's definitely one of the things that's holding women back. Our visions are far too small. And especially in the world that we live in now, we need to have big visions, but really big visions, because otherwise we are not redesigning the system and coming up with new solutions, right? So tell us about that.
Well, I will go through the steps, but just to address we need to have big visions. Even, I love the confidence you say it in, but most women, when you say that, immediately start attacking themselves and saying, who am I? I'm not perfect. Someone's going to find me out. And it's this whole imposter syndrome. None of us are perfect, and we're all just making it up. We're all making it up as we go. Nobody freaking knows. Nobody knows. So understand that that is what adulthood looks like, is just making it up every day and being okay with that. But the more you understand in your heart the consequences of you not doing something, that will help you have the motivation to say, at least it's worth trying. And if you don't quit, you win. So stop thinking that it's holy to play small. Because if you were being that girl that was being so abused and no one ever cared, all you would wish every day is that somebody was doing something about it. That's all you would wish every single day in your life suffering. So whatever it is that you've overcome, ladies listening to this, that you could possibly make life a little easier for somebody else with what you learned from your experience, it is your responsibility to turn and help pull somebody through the fire. If you're going to go through the fire, go through it quickly and help other people go through it quickly. So I want you to, instead of being intimidated by, it takes big visions, understand it's my responsibility to have a big vision. Now, I was not born rich. I didn't know anybody rich. I didn't know anybody that owned a lot of stuff. I didn't even have a friend with a boat. And one of my friends had like a video game set growing up, but that was like it. And we thought they were so rich. So I looked at my life at 17 and said, even if I don't have anything, because I live in a country where I could learn it on the internet, then it's my responsibility to figure it out. And so I took that responsibility. And I've heard a lot of this whole privilege bullcrap lately. Privilege is not something to put yourself down by. If somebody else starts here and you start in life here, you're responsible for this. They're responsible for here. There's so much farther you have to take it. So stop knocking yourself out of the game because of whatever guilt you feel like embracing today. It's just another excuse to play small. So at 12, I had this vision of serving in Africa. 17, I go to this school to learn how to do it. At the end of that trip I went on, which was like the culmination event of all the training we got that year, I came back to school and this rich guy came in, and I hated rich people at the time. I actually thought they were evil and they were all bad guys. I don't know if it was like Cruella de Vil or all these Disney movies where it was always the bad guy was the rich person. But I didn't want to listen to him. So I skipped class, and I didn't realize he was speaking for multiple days. So I ended up in his class anyway. But he was talking about how you can go buy assets, like a house. And if you rent it out for more than you have to pay to own it, that's a thing called cash flow. And I was like, go on. And he said, if you do that 10 times, you can live in Africa and you don't have to ask anybody for money to fund your mission. And I was very interested in that because I did not like the idea of having to ask other people to pay for my calling. I'd rather just be able to do whatever I want. And I want to encourage all of you, if you're able to listen to this at all, then you can create that life. You absolutely can. It's going to seem impossible. And it was always annoying to me. I was like, it's mindset. It's not just freaking mindset. It's mindset and action. What are you spending your free time learning? Are you scrolling or are you learning? Are you hanging out with losers? Or are you hanging out with people that are on the path or where you want to be? And if you can't hang out with them, how can you listen to their podcasts? How can you completely immerse yourself in that world to where it's normal for you? Because you'll always do what you think is normal. So pick your normal. So 17, I heard this guy. 18, I bought my first house. I was a waitress and they were giving almost anybody loans at that time. It's 2007. And in the process of buying it, I heard about this thing called flipping houses, which you could buy a crappy house. I'm a hard worker. You can put some work into it, fix it up, and then sell it and make like $10,000, which I thought was $1 billion as an 18-year-old. And if you do that 10 times, then you can, buy an apartment complex and you could then make $10,000 a month in this thing called cash flow. And I was like, wow, I need to do that. And I want to move to Africa before I turn 26. So I'm going to buy an apartment complex before I turn 26. That was my plan. And I Googled what colleges teach you how to flip houses. Guess which ones popped up? None. So I'm very practical. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to college. Well, my family was not a very big fan of that. None of my friends were a big fan of that. And so I was really rejected for about 2 years. And I'm taking the time to share this, not to throw anybody under the bus, because they didn't understand. They understood the path to success required college. And you have got to be able to know for yourself, even if it's a guess, that this is the best path that I've researched for where I want to go. And then you have to be confident to take those steps, no matter who does or does not approve it. So at 18, I did not go to college, even though I always planned to, and I'm very pro education. I just didn't teach what I wanted to learn. And that was hard because right after I bought that house, I decided, I'm going to learn all this real estate. It's going to work. I'm going to become this multimillionaire. I'm going to help all these people. Well, that was at the same exact year the global economic meltdown happened, specifically in real estate. In 2008 was not a cool thing to be part of. And everything I touched failed for almost 3 years. But I would read every book I could get my hands on. I'd study almost 12 hours a day. And the rest of the time I was working like double shifts just to try to survive financially. And after 3 years of pretty much abysmal failure and living off my credit cards and going into debt, I had this couple walk in to the Cheesecake Factory that I was working as a waitress, trying to learn real estate on the back end. And they were real estate investors. And had I not been studying, I would not be prepared for the questions they started asking me when I was so excited when I found out what they did. And those questions, again, I have a very long story and it's insane. And it's like full of these insane miracles. And like, had I not asked this one thing, I wouldn't be here. But because they were so impressed with everything I'd been teaching myself every night, instead of going out partying like all the other 20-something-year-olds, instead of just hanging out with friends, I was studying. And because I'd been studying, they were so impressed that they said, okay, we would love to invite you to this event. And at that event, I met a guy who I offered to work for. And I took a job that was $600 less than the minimums on my credit cards. I moved several states away. And I was so excited. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. I rented my house out to these guys on Craigslist and I was like, this is it. I'm going to finally learn real estate. And within 2 months, he fired me. The first month's rent check on that house bounced, and I've now got tenants I have to evict, but I believed them. So I let them live there for free for 8 months. And I'm like, debt. So I end up living in my car and working for free for these guys who were rehabbers, who were taking houses and flipping them. The day I got fired was the day I met them. And I said, can I work for you for free? Now, the reason I'm telling this level of detail is that even though I was essentially extremely starved out, I still knew in my heart that the only way to get ahead in life is to give first and to serve. And so find people who are going where you want to go and find a way to serve them and learn from them. I worked 21 hours a day for them while I lived in my car. So I wasn't like I was living in my car that much because it was just at night. And I learned the business. And after 9 months, they were like, okay, you're ready to do this by yourself. And the first time I did it by myself, everything went wrong. I mean, almost like absolute madness and calamity. But on that dang first house close, I made $40,000 and I was off to the races. Now I had worked to learn, not just to earn, for the first almost 4 years of my career, which means no matter how much money other people work for, like you can't take this away from me. I know what I'm doing now. And I became the biggest rehabber in all of Nashville within the next year, the biggest. And I'm only like 22 now. I became a multimillionaire by 24. And then after going back and forth to Africa and seeing how real estate development, literally of the orphanages that we were building, we're creating all these jobs in the surrounding communities to where impoverished areas became the wealthiest areas. And people no longer had to do terrible things because they were desperate, because they now had opportunity. And those opportunities were accomplishing the very call that I started my whole journey out in. And so I then became the biggest real estate developer and one of the biggest urban developers in the Southeast. And I won Forbes' 6th fastest growing woman-owned company in the world. And then Fortune #3 fastest growing urban company, men and women in the United States. And I won a bunch of other cool awards. But that's not why I ever did it. I did this because I want to create opportunity for people who have none. I wanted to show that little girl that she's valuable. I want to show that dad that this is not your, punching bag. You can't just be terrible to people. You can't give your worst. And it's time to step it up, and I've been able to do that. And so now I just turned 34 last week and I own 7 different companies. And I get to spend 40+% of my time going into these developing nations, specifically after disasters occur. And we do emergency rescue work, but then we work with the government on how to actually rebuild your country to bring in new economic opportunity, to bring in new jobs, to bring in, to make the worst thing that ever happened to you, which is a disaster affecting your country, to becoming the best thing that ever happened to you. How do you take your pain and make it your purpose? And so in Ukraine right now, my team has rescued over 1,600 people, mostly orphans. And there are people that are currently alive right now that would not be alive had I not stepped into my purpose. And so if I could encourage you ladies with anything, again, it's not holy to play small. And we all want to shy away and expect somebody to just knight in shining armor us and like come rescue us when we have problems. No, you are smart enough. You are worthy enough, and you can still be beautiful and hot. That has nothing to do with it, but you can be it all. You can have it all, and you don't have to have somebody else come save you. You are worthy. You are enough. You are valuable, with or without an attachment of any sort.
Britnie, I love it. Thank you so much for going roundabout and telling us the big story. Britnie, what do you think is your superpower? How do you think you managed all that?
I'm going to say there's two things because I've never said the first one out loud, but it came to my spirit while you were just saying that. The superpower would be that I was nice enough to myself finally. Now, after the first several years, I really was hard on myself and beat myself up, and you're not, I just realized like that's such a distraction. Gotta die trying, right? You know, just try. So being nice enough to myself to say I don't have the full picture and I'm okay with that, and to start viewing life as a fun adventure versus something you have to get right. You're not going to get it right, but you can try. And so that is a superpower that has allowed me the grace to try and do things that I've never seen done before, especially by women, which sucks. I'd like to see it done by women. I just haven't seen some of my stuff done by women. So when you haven't seen it done, don't think, well, there's no other women doing this. You get to be the one. Congratulations. You get to be the one that gives permission to the next girl, but you don't need permission, but it's handy, right? So step one, or superpower one, would be being freaking nice enough to myself to let myself try and do this and fail and keep going. And then number two is, I think I'm actually not very good at many things, which is fine. I know that the one thing I am really good at is seeing what things can be. And so I can walk in, and it's a trained skill. I was not born with you're natural. I'm not naturally good at pretty much anything. Which I say that not to beat myself up, but to encourage you. You don't have to be naturally good at stuff. You can study. You have YouTube. You have Google. So there's no excuses. You can become good at whatever you want to become good at. And don't hide behind the personality test that says you're an introvert or an extrovert. Just be what you freaking want to be. Whatever you want to be, just be it. And so I learned when I was living in my car how to make something valuable, and how do you see something done that isn't done yet. So if you walk into like a really beat up building, how do you see it beautiful? And so I can do that with people. I can see their potential, and I can do it with places. I can see its potential. And so instead of complaining about why isn't it right here, I am still actively trying to say, instead of complaining that it's not right here, how do I create the systems to bring it to here? Or how do I encourage it enough to be here? How do I empower it enough to be here? How do you speak life enough for it to be here? And when I was 21 and 22, nobody believed I could be a real estate developer or in construction in the South of America. They don't look like me, you know, and girls don't do this stuff or didn't do this stuff. And so one of my keys to success was I would create presentations for these visions that I would have in my head. And I would show bankers and investors and whoever what things can be. And so write this down as one of your top takeaways today, guys. You will always be paid for the vision other people don't have. So just, if they call you crazy It's because they can't see it. If they say that this will never work, it's because they can't see it. So a pro tip is help them see it by creating great presentations and great visuals so they can see it. It does make it a little easier.
Brittany, you've replied the next question already. You are so full of top tips, and I love that. And there is so much wisdom, and there'll be so many takeaways for other women. Brittany, what is your plan, your dream for your future? Where are you heading?
Great question. Wow. My dream is to help develop nations to where people have better opportunities than selling their kids, and they have better opportunities than doing desperate things, to where women never feel like they have to do things they don't want to do to get ahead or to be successful or to be valuable. I want people to have enough opportunities to where they don't have to stay in abusive relationships, or not live abundant lives. Like, may it be an option to have to be impoverished because you're choosing to be that way, not that that's the only way. And so I'm actively looking to set other people on fire for life to find their purpose, because your purpose is different than my purpose. But I'm so glad you're walking in your purpose, Stephanie. Like, it's huge and it's so important. And the more you do yours and you do yours and you do yours, there will be no problems on the planet, because we've all, again, overcome something, and we can be a blessing to the next person going through that. So if I can help light people on fire to do their purpose while I'm actively living in mine, which is creating opportunity where there is none most of the time, then this is going to be a beautiful place to be. So that is where I hope to be. I'm going to be an amazing mom when it's time to be a mom. I'm now an amazing wife. I just got married in January, and I'm going to continue to be excellent at all my businesses and help as many people as humanly possible as I'm serving humanity.
Brittany, I'm really grateful to the universe for having you in it. Thank you for your service, and thank you so much for talking to us today.
Yes, well, thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to this, all of you young ladies who are hungry and looking to do more with your life. You have permission to be great, and you do not have permission to play small. That's not right. So decide now and then take the next steps accordingly.
Thank you, Brittany, for sharing all your wisdom.